Snow fell in slow, whispering veils across the Montana wilderness, painting the pine-covered ridges in pale silence. The kind of silence that makes a man hear his own heartbeat. Jack Rayner had come out here for that very reason, to get away from the noise. The noise of doctors, of condolences, of a world that moved too fast after his wife's passing. The cabin he'd built years ago for weekend retreats had become his only refuge. He trudged through the powder now, rifle slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning for deer tracks. It wasn't about the hunt. It was about the motion, the ritual, the quiet discipline that kept him from falling apart. But as he crested a ridge near Miller's Hollow, the rhythm of his boots halted. At the base of a frozen creek lay a shape, large, still, and dusted with snow. For a moment, Jack thought it was a dog. Then he saw the long snout, the thick fur, the sheer size of the thing. A wolf. He moved closer, his breath clouding in the cold air. The animal's flank shuddered weakly, ribs heaving with effort. Blood darkened the snow near its hind leg. A trap, an old steel one, rusted and cruel, bit deep into the limb, half hidden under frost. Jack's stomach turned. Poachers, maybe. Or ranchers from the valley, still bitter about livestock losses. He crouched, heart hammering, as the wolf's eyes flickered open, pale gold, clouded with pain but fiercely alive. "Easy there," Jack muttered, voice low. He should walk away. Wild animals weren't meant to be saved. Nature was harsh. That was its way. But something in those eyes, something raw, desperate, aware, caught him. It wasn't just fear. It was trust. Or maybe resignation that trusted him more than fate itself. He set down his rifle and pulled off his gloves. The wolf gave a warning growl, faint and broken, but didn't lunge. Jack unlatched the trap, hands trembling. The mechanism gave with a metallic snap, freeing the mangled leg. The animal didn't bolt. It just collapsed, panting, eyes locked on him. Jack tore strips from his flannel shirt, wrapping the wound. "You're lucky I found you," he said quietly. "Or maybe I'm the lucky one." He carried the wolf, God knows how, back to the cabin, its weight heavy against his shoulder. Inside, the fire crackled to life. He laid the animal by the hearth, unsure if it would last the night. He should have called wildlife services, but something stopped him. The world would put it down. And Jack, for the first time in months, felt something stirring in his chest other than grief. By morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight spilled through the frosted windows. Jack blinked awake to the sound of low breathing beside him. The wolf's eyes were open again, clearer now, watching him with an intelligence that unsettled him. "Well," Jack murmured, setting a hand against his knee, "guess you're not giving up easy." The wolf blinked once, slow. Then, against all reason, it dragged itself closer to the fire and laid its head beside his boot. And in that moment, Jack realized something strange. He wasn't the only one here fighting to survive. The day passed slowly, marked by the crackle of firewood and the rhythm of the wolf's shallow breaths. Jack spent it tending to the wound as best he could, using what little he remembered from first aid classes decades ago. He melted snow for water, mixed it with antiseptic, and cleaned the gash while the animal winced and growled low in its throat. It could have bitten him, should have, but it didn't. It simply endured, gaze fixed on him like it was trying to decide if he was its savior or its executioner. By evening, the sky bruised to purple over the pines. Jack sat in his old rocking chair, the wolf still lying by the hearth, its breathing steadier now. The firelight danced on the cabin walls, illuminating the scars and photographs that told the story of a life once full, one that felt distant now. His eyes fell on a framed picture of his late wife, Claire, smiling under the same Montana sun that seemed so cruelly cold now. He spoke without thinking, voice low. "You'd have scolded me for this, bringing a wild animal into the house?" His lips twitched. "You would have done it anyway." The wolf's ears twitched at his voice, head lifting weakly. Jack met its gaze. "You're not gonna die on me, are you?" he asked softly. "I've had enough of that." The creature gave a soft exhale, its body relaxing, as if it understood. That night, Jack dreamed of snow turning to ash. He saw Claire standing in the doorway, her hair shimmering like frost, her voice echoing through the cabin. "Don't stop saving things, Jack, even if it hurts." He reached for her, but the light faded, replaced by the low, steady breathing of the wolf beside him. When morning came, the animal was standing. Its leg was still wrapped and trembling, but it stood tall, proud, even defiant. Jack froze, coffee cup halfway to his lips. The wolf stared at him for several long seconds, tail low but eyes alert, measuring him. Then, to his surprise, it took a step forward. Then another. It crossed the room until its muzzle was inches from his hand. Jack didn't move. The wolf sniffed his fingers, then pressed its nose against his palm. A fleeting, almost reverent touch, and retreated to the rug again. Jack let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Guess that's your way of saying thanks." Over the next few days, a strange rhythm grew between them. Jack fed it bits of venison stew and water. The wolf, in turn, watched his every move, never quite relaxed, but never hostile either. He started talking again, about Claire, about the world beyond the trees, about how he didn't know what to do with the silence anymore. The wolf never answered, but sometimes, when the wind howled outside, Jack swore it listened. By the end of the week, the wound had started to knit together. Jack knew the time would come soon, the time to let it go. But something deep inside him twisted at the thought. He didn't want to lose it. Not yet. Not another heartbeat in this empty world. On the 8th morning, Jack woke to find the cabin door ajar, snow blowing in through the crack. The hearth was cold. His heart sank as he scanned the room. The wolf was gone, but something deep inside him twisted at the thought. He didn't want to lose it. Not yet. Not another heartbeat in this empty world. On the 8th morning, Jack woke to find the cabin door ajar, snow blowing in through the crack. The hearth was cold. His heart sank as he scanned the room. The wolf was gone. He stepped outside, boots crunching in the frost. The wind cut sharp against his face, stinging his cheeks. For a few seconds, he saw nothing, just the endless white of the forest. Then, faintly, he spotted paw prints leading down toward the creek. A part of him wanted to call out, but what would he even say? Come back? Be careful? It was absurd. Wild things didn't belong to anyone. Still, he followed the tracks. They led to the same frozen bend where he'd first found it. The old trap still sat there, bloodied and half buried in the snow. But the wolf was nowhere to be seen. Only silence remained, heavy and absolute. Jack stood there for a long while, staring into the trees, his breath curling upward like ghosts. Then, finally, he turned back toward the cabin. That night felt emptier than any before. The sound of the fire meant nothing without the low breathing beside it. Jack sat alone at the table, listening to the timber creak under the cold. He thought about Claire, about the dream, about how even saving something didn't mean it would stay. 3 days passed. Then 4. He stopped checking the woods. Life, if you could call it that, slid back into its dull rhythm, until the knocking started. It was faint, just before dawn. A soft thump against the cabin wall. Then another. Jack frowned, grabbed his rifle, and crept toward the door. When he opened it, the blast of cold air took his breath away, and what stood beyond it nearly dropped him to his knees. The wolf was back. But it wasn't alone. Beside it stood another wolf, slightly smaller, its coat streaked with silver and frost. The first wolf's leg had healed enough for it to stand tall, regal even. It stared at Jack with the same golden eyes as before, but now there was something new there. Recognition. Intention. Jack's hand trembled on the doorframe. Well, I'll be damned. The wolves didn't growl, didn't advance. They simply stood in the snow, waiting. Jack could feel it, the electric tension between their world and his. Then, slowly, the first wolf stepped forward, stopping just a few feet away. It lowered its head, almost like a bow. For a heartbeat, man and animal regarded each other across the threshold of wilderness and humanity. Jack felt something shift, an invisible bridge of understanding forming between them. Then, as quietly as they had come, both wolves turned and vanished into the forest, their tracks swallowed by falling snow. Jack stood there long after they were gone, cold air biting at his skin, heart pounding with a strange warmth he hadn't felt in years. He didn't fully understand what had just happened, but he knew one thing. Whatever bond had been forged out there in the frozen silence, it wasn't broken. Spring came early that year. The snows melted, rivers swelled, and the cabin's roof dripped with thaw. Jack spent his mornings chopping wood, his evenings sitting by the window, sipping coffee and watching the forest wake up again. He talked less, but he smiled more. One evening, while walking near the ridge at sunset, he heard a sound behind him, a soft rustle, then a low, familiar growl. He turned. At the tree line stood the healed wolf, with 3 playful pups. It met Jack's gaze, howled, a sound of life and gratitude, and vanished into the pines. Jack smiled through tears, the wind cold, but his heart warm. For the first time since Claire's death, the forest no longer felt empty.